it did work. Great. And we are live. Excellent. Great to be here, everybody. And my first time hosting a live stream since I trimmed the beard, if you all hadn't noticed yet. I feel like I lost a few pounds just by shaving. I think that's the first time in my life a haircut and a shave made me lose some weight, but that's pretty funny. But great to have you here, Mitch. And let's just kind of start off with, and anybody that's joining, I know I got a few people probably coming into the live Zoom, and I know there's going to be people watching on Facebook as well as the YouTube stream. So one thing I want to talk about, and toward the end, Mitch is going to give away the link for this, but some of the software and some of the tools we're going to talk about today in terms of appointment setting and ways to scale that and some new tools. Mitch has access for you guys to get some free accounts where you can get a handful of these auto dials and these calls that we're going to talk about. So that'll make a lot more sense, but I just kind of wanted to start off with letting you know, if you stick around to the end, you'll have some more information and the link for that. Or it's probably going to be down in the description. Or if you're watching this, just comment if you want that information, and we'll be sure to get it. But let's dive into your background a little, Mitch. Why don't you just start off telling people maybe a little about how we met and when we got engaged together, but your experience, and what you've been doing since you and I have connected and some of the stuff you've accomplished.
Absolutely. So the way that Ray and I met was I joined one of the PDOCS programs in 2021, I believe. And I joined it because I was looking to build a sales coaching business. Like at the time, I was doing some sales coaching on the side and helping salespeople find gigs and helping businesses, kind of improve their high ticket sales processes. And I was like, let me kind of take this to the moon, but let me start properly using organic. And of course, PDOCS is obviously the answer for that, duh, right? And so I did one of the PDOCS programs back then. I think it was called Auto Organic. Good times. And then,
Good times.
Yeah. And then you were my main point of contact there. And we built out the offer, the process and everything. And since then, I've actually built the sales coaching business. The highest peak month that we had was 167K in that month in cash collected. So, and then we were at, we averaged 100K for about 8 months, right? So it had a pretty solid run rate. And then what I decided to do, as I was starting to run into some scaling issues, right? Because I was like, okay, well, I have all these leads that have been built up over the last year, and I have all these phone numbers and all these emails and all these texts. How do I properly work them? Well, why don't I hire some appointment setters, right? But we're not talking DM setters, right? Because DM setting is great when you're trying to book an initial appointment with someone and capture somebody's interest. But what about all of the leads that maybe they booked a call and no-showed, maybe they opted into your funnel, but they didn't actually go all the way to the end to even book a call. Maybe you had a sales call with them and they didn't close, right? What about all of those leads? Who's actually following up with those leads? Most businesses are not doing that. We certainly were not doing that. We wanted to start doing that, but hiring humans to call is such a pain in the ass, right?
Yeah.
There's only, I want to say maybe 1, 2, maybe 3% of high ticket businesses have figured that out. But instead of bending over backwards trying to join that 1, 2, or 3%, there's now a much easier way, right? And that kind of foreshadows part of what we're going to talk about today, right? But right at that time, what we ended up doing was creating a script that was kind of a plug and play script for reaching into your list of leads and then resurrecting them and getting them back onto the calendar, right? And also, when you run like a lead form ad or something like that, and a lead opts into something, making sure that you dial them right away and getting them onto a call. And we did optimize the process. The problem was that we couldn't scale the setting team at the rate that we wanted to because of the inefficiencies of humans, right? And so right around that time, this little platform that was an artificial intelligence-based phone setter that can call your on autopilot and replicate what your best human setter can do was coming out. And we're like, we got to jump on this. And then once we looked into it, we're like, yo, we have something here that we can actually offer as a service and build this out for other high ticket businesses that are looking to get their existing leads resurrected and their current leads coming in just tapped right away. And that's kind of how we got here. I'm sure you have
Awesome.
questions, but that's the background.
No, that's a good backstory. And thank you for, thank you for saying the compliments you did about the program. And yeah, as I mentioned in one of the posts this week, as I was kind of talking about this week's live stream, I had mentioned that you're in that kind of top 10% of people who came through our program and hit those 6-figure months and did it consistently. And those are the people I love to, bring back on and share their experiences and see where you've gone, how you've evolved, and what type of offers you're now, focused on. So that's really cool for I think everybody to see that's watching, as well as for me to kind of get back and bring people like that back into the network to share their expertise, because like you mentioned, the PDOCS Auto Organic, that was our flagship and our core offer the first 12 to 18 months we were in business, and we had a lot of people come through it. But I stayed in good contact with a lot of our successful clients that had good success, and it's great sharing and doing that stuff. But I think you mentioned something cool that I want to touch on next, and kind of transition, is a lot of what I teach and what I do in terms of appointment setting is that DM setting. And what you're talking about is a totally different thing. And right now, actually, I'm building a couple, outbound call teams. You actually provided me with reps for a couple of them. And you're right, it is difficult. It's very difficult. And there's other ways to go around it. So we're going to talk about that. But what I'd like to touch on first is, before you get to the AI aspect of thing and these tools we're going to talk about, for anybody that's either an existing appointment setter that might think they are, but they may not quite be, or they're aspiring to be, what do you think are like the 3 main duties and tasks of an appointment setter? Whether it's a person or AI, you still needed to do some of these same responsibilities.
Of course. And are we talking like strictly dialing, or just overall? Does that include DMs as well?
Let's do more dialing for this. I'd like to touch on more dialing, and just so everybody watching understands, and more about the outbound approach and outbound dialing rather than Facebook groups or DMs. Let's go with that, because that's what we really want to focus on more.
100%. Because so like in today's day and age, cold calling still works, but there are a lot of new rules and regulations that are starting to be passed around cold calling, especially if you're going to be using AI to do it or to help you do it, and so on and so forth. So the best place to, kind of like focus in on is existing leads that have already engaged with your stuff, that have already opted into something, right? And many businesses have pretty big lists of like thousands of leads or tens of thousands of leads whose phone numbers they have that are just sitting around, right? And 50, 100, 200 opt-ins a day coming in, just like begging to be dialed, right? So that's a great place to start. You want to start with the opt-ins. That's the lowest hanging fruit, right? So first and foremost, you want to give that lead context as to why you're even calling them. Hey, it shows me here that you opted into our ad teaching you about so on and so forth, right? Is that still of interest to you? And if the answer is yes, then you go ahead and you do a short little discovery and figure out if it makes sense to book them on a call, whether that be a closing call or whether that be, kind of an inbound triage call, depending on how much time the lead has, like right now in that moment. Maybe you have that triage call right now, you save yourself.
And also maybe depending on your process and your sales cycle as a business too, right?
Exactly. It depends. And then just like making sure that you're saving the closer time on not dealing with a prospect that's not high probability, right? But also you are deferring to the closer to talk about anything like pricing and specifics of the offer, right? Because if you try to disclose too much specifics of the offer, then it's going to turn into a Q&A call, and we all know how those go. Those don't close, right? So yeah, those are just like a couple of tips. I don't know if I gave you 3 tips or 2 or 4, but
No, that was good.
Yeah.
That was good. I mean, I think that ties back into knowing the objective of the purpose of this engagement with the prospect, right? Your job isn't necessarily to close them. I always like to use what's you probably might have heard this metaphor, the kind of the ACEs framework for everything we do within our businesses, right? First, we grab their attention, whether that's organic, ad, email, outbound dial, right? Whatever that is. Then we get into the actual conversation, and that's where we're kind of understanding and pre-qualifying and seeing if they're a good fit. If so, we go into E, which is to educate. We want to educate them a little more about our services, the gap that we fill for them, the benefit we provide, whatever that is, right? The outcome. And then you get into S, the sale. The problem is if you're going for the sale before you get that conversation and the education right, that's what you're talking about when you don't see any results, right? So I think knowing the objective, and your objective there is to have the conversation and then get them to possibly education resources, but it's not to close a deal.
Exactly. And outbound, and there's there's no major fundamental difference between outbound dialing and outbound DMs, right? Like you're still trying to capture their interest and you're still trying to ask them the questions. The cool thing though is if the list opted in, it is actually like very similar to what you guys preach with the auto organic of like, hey bro, you expressed interest in this, right? Like, is that still of interest or right? Like, so
That's
it has a
exactly
lot
it.
of parallels, has a lot of parallels, yeah.
And I like what you mentioned there, and everybody should take note of this. That's one of the things we hear a lot, is whether it's misconceptions, not knowing, is what's the compliance restrictions, right? So going with people that have opted in and already in your pipeline that at some point had requested information, had replied to an ad, whatever that is in your system, is definitely the way to go in terms of how warm the people are first off, but more so the compliance aspect of it. As you had mentioned, currently I have one pipeline with 12,000 leads, right, where people have opted in, and we were trying to get back in contact with all those with 2 manual appointment setters. Like, good luck, right? And then the organization, like you said, whose job is it, right? And how much can your sales reps be doing follow-up, or how much is that the appointment setter? There's all those kind of logistical things that come into play, especially when you're going at scale and you're filling pipelines. So just recently we wisened up and got some AI help inside of and they're only reaching out to our warm people who engaged, opted in, right? And they are a legit lead in our ecosystem. So great. You kind of touched on it there, but I'd like you to just give maybe a more specific definition in your terms of how you see it, the main difference between inbound and outbound, because I think there's some misconceptions there as well.
Yeah. So it could be an outbound dial without being a cold call, right? Because you have a list in front of you of people that opted into your funnel at some point, but you yourself are calling them, right? That's an outbound dial. Inbound would be like someone came in through your funnel and they booked a call with you, right? Or maybe they called in live. That would be inbound. But you can also outbound dial and inbound lead, right? So it gets a little bit confusing with the terminology, but the basic gist is like outbound doesn't necessarily just mean cold calling.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And something else you touched on and you mentioned, and we're going to dive into a little more, and this is exactly what's going to lead into talking more about what we're going to really dive into here momentarily. But you mentioned resurrecting a list. Talk about that a little more.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So like so many businesses in this space, in any space that I've spoken to are like, I asked them, so like how many leads over the last year have opted into your funnel and haven't been disqualified as a bad fit, but also haven't closed? And I hear thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, right? It depends on what size business you speak to, right? And so like sure, maybe some businesses hit them with some email marketing here and there that some people bite on, maybe some SMS stuff, but how many businesses are actually calling these people in a personalized way and seeing like, hey, I know we spoke 3 months ago about getting XYZ going and it wasn't a fit back then. I'm wondering, has anything changed right now? Like, it's so crazy how many sales you can get just by resurrecting that list that way.
You're right. And people, I think, either don't do it persistent or they overthink it, right? It's not that complicated. You just reach out, like you said, hey, a few months ago, we had talked about this and the timing wasn't right. The funds weren't there, right? Whatever. Curious what's transpired in the last 90 days since we spoke. And if you're still looking at this, right? Whatever it is, you don't have to overthink it.
Exactly. And I'd imagine your next question was going to be, okay, like what about the fresh opt-ins? Well, we already know that speed with fresh opt-ins is everything. The sooner that someone opts in and you call them, the more likely it is that you're going to be able to get them on a call, right? If you're running like a VSL funnel or something like that, most leads are not even going to make it to the VSL, right? Like they're going to drop off there, but you're going to have their contact info. That's free money, man. Like you got to call them right away. But the problem with humans is that like it's tough to actually manage that process to get them called right away. And that is why things like AI and so on and so forth are like gaining that popularity because AI can do that. But more on that later.
Yeah. Well, actually, let's dive into that now. And then I got a little bit of a transition backwards, but that kind of dives into, you had mentioned, your success with your, growing your sales agency and your sales placement, company, Rapid Closer. And
Correct.
now, have you kind of merged that with what you're doing, or are you just more is like salesagency.ai a combination? Can you talk more about your current offer and what you're doing, and then how this tool plays in?
For sure. So ultimately, there is a plan to kind of merge the two companies and have them work in tandem. But right now they are separate. I'm not really bringing in new students or new businesses into the rapid closer program. Most of my focus is geared on sales agency AI. And so the service itself that we are offering is we are building AI bots that then do the outbound dialing for both a list that needs to be resurrected and fresh opt-ins on behalf of businesses, the same way that a human setter would.
Except they don't take breaks, they don't call out sick, and they're always going to have the tonality and the verbiage you're looking for because you're programming it.
Exactly. And it's kind of like having an infinitely scalable call center that gets cheaper and cheaper to run the more reps you add. Imagine having a call center that gets cheaper instead of more expensive. That's kind of how it works with AI.
Which is backwards from what happens now if you build it with manual talent. You know what I mean?
Or even with ads, right? Because
yeah, correct.
Right. Because so, like, let's say that you're spending 10K per month on ads, like right now, right? And you're making 100K per month with your business. If you want to scale to 200K per month with your business, you're likely going to have to spend 30K per month on ads, right? So it's like you kind of have to triple your ads to double your business at a certain point.
Yeah.
Versus if you want to triple your business, you just double your spend on AI at that same point, right? So it's an inverse relationship with that.
Or you just close your eyes and double your price and hope it works, right? That's what a lot of people are doing out there.
Exactly.
Cool. Yeah. Talk a little, you and I spoke a little on Monday for a brief 10 minutes just to kind of set the agenda for today, as I normally do. And you talked a little about the story, on one of the instances that you went through and where you saw value and when you started implementing this and why you really, started making this your primary focus, as you talked about. Can you tell a little about that?
Yeah, absolutely, man. So I remember it like it was yesterday. It was July of 2023, and me and my right-hand man, Corey, were in Split, Croatia, right? And we were pulling all-nighters trying to figure out how the hell we were going to scale our human setter team, right? And I made a post on this. It was something along the lines of skilled SDRs aren't diligent SDRs aren't skilled. And if they're both diligent and skilled, they're not going to last long at your company anyway, because they're always going to be hypergamous and leveling up, right? So there's like 1% of businesses that are able to pull this off, but to really scale a call center or like an SDR team without running into lots of obstacles, like there's a lot of things that have to go right. And instead of counting on everything to go right, why don't you just use AI that makes it infinitely scalable? Now, back then in July, this didn't exist yet, right? Mm-hmm. And then one all-nighter, I think Corey went to bed like 2 hours before me. I think he went to bed at 4 a.m. and I went to bed at 6 a.m. or vice versa, something like that, right? Or maybe we were in two separate rooms, but I see a text and he sends me this tweet, and the tweet is a recording of an AI having a full-on SDR set call. And I was like, what the hell, right? And back then I didn't really put two and two together, right? But then like a month later is when the stuff really started to like come out and roll out and so on and so forth. And I was like, this is the opportunity. Like, this is what we have to jump on. And it, like, initially we were considering just like using the AI to dial the leads that we had, but then we said, no, you know what, like we're sitting on something so much greater than that. Like, this is actually what we want to put our time into and perhaps even build as a business. And that's how we got here today.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So talk more about that business, that tool itself. And do you have any examples to share, like here on the call, or will that be in the link you're providing? Give me a little more information. I'm sure the people are all interested, because I know what you're talking about, and I found out about it relatively early too, before it was fully functional. And I was like, my eyes lit up too. I'm like, holy shit. Cause I have a part of my program called DM Setter Academy, where I'm scaling these, outbound DM setting teams. But when I saw this, I was like, that's a much better way to go than when I'm especially at scale. So but talk a little more about that.
Absolutely, man. So the tech has come a really long way since that recording in July. Like, I listened to that recording like from July, and it sounds horrible comparing to how it sounds right now. It's day and night. For some reason, on the actual landing page of the company, they still have the old demo. And I'm like, guys, like, you got to have the new demos. It's like day and night. But the old demo is cool because it references something that was like really popular at that time. And that's why they like it. I'm going to reveal the name soon. I'm going to send the link soon. In that link, you have a demo. I'm going to show everything. But what was your question? What was your question, Ray?
No, it was just more just like talk about the actual
Uh,
tool, how people
yeah.
can get a hold of it, how they can actually see it and like, you know, physically tangible, like what you're talking about. That's great. And I didn't even know they were still using that one. I know which one you're talking about. I think it would
Yeah.
also be cool if they used it before and after. Like this was it 7 months ago, this is it today or whatever. You know what I mean?
100%, 100%. Yeah, man. So like it's come a really long way. And here's like the thing, right? It's becoming a little bit more of a democratized thing where it's like anybody can make an account and build the bot and so on and so forth. But to this day, I still think if you're serious about scaling a sales team with AI, you shouldn't try to build it yourself. You can mess around with it yourself, you can play with it yourself, but you shouldn't try to build it yourself only because for something like this, you kind of need a pretty vast amount of like prompt engineering skills, and you kind of want to leave it in the hands of like people that do this on a daily basis. Because anytime that I hear from anyone, oh, like it doesn't work, like the technology's not there yet. It's like, okay, did you use standard editor or advanced editor? And they're like, what's advanced editor? I'm like, exactly. Right. So it's like, you could build it yourself, and kind of like the self-serve option is like a no code and no like prompting kind of thing. You just kind of like upload your script, but it works a million times better when there's some actual prompt engineering happening. And so that was the gap that we saw in the market in terms of like as a business. And that's the gap that we fill by building it out for people.
Totally. No, super important, super important. When you're doing anything with technology, AI, if that's not your expertise and you know, you're not the, why would you try to do it yourself? I know there's satisfaction with doing certain things yourself, but generally when it's tech setup and it's not your area of expertise, you're going to cost yourself more in trial and error and setup costs than you are paying for whatever it costs to have the expert do it. And I think we've all learned in this space by now, at certain point, if you don't pay somebody who's already been there and done that, like I just know all the times I've done that, it helped me level up in such a short amount of time. You know what I mean? When exactly that piece I needed, whether it was organic training, cool, I got into a course, or whether it was first learning my first Facebook ads, like that just helped me level up 10 times, you know, the speed I would have done on my own. So that's super relevant. Yeah, dive into the name of the company and how people can get access and see some of this. I know off the top of my head, just really quickly before you do that, I can remember 3 or 4 that they sent me over in terms of samples that I heard recently. One was a Tesla one. Another was the I think it was the Vision Pros, right? Some of the sample calls, and those ones, there was a couple really, really good ones. I was like, damn, they did that like as good as a person.
Yeah. Yeah. So I can definitely show a really good demo that is new and up to date and sounds really good. I'm happy to do that. I also want to share the name of the company, but before I do, so last time that I was on a webinar like this, I disclosed the name of the company, and then everyone just like went to that site and like overwhelmed that site without actually using my affiliate link.
Oh,
So I
that's a
want to make
bitch.
sure. So I want to make sure that everyone uses my affiliate link to go to the site. You don't actually have to pay anything, right? But I get the credit for it. And then if you do end up like using it, then I do make like a small commission, disclosure, whatever. Where can I paste the affiliate link for people to be able to use that for the site?
Yeah,
Where
so
can I?
right now, put it here in the chat and send it to me in our private DM thread on Messenger, and I will get it in the link to this post in where I post it on YouTube, and I'll make sure that people can only get there through that link.
Okay, cool. And then
My people are good. They're going to go through your link rather than go around that. You know what I mean?
awesome, cool. And then can I share my screen? Is
You
that
sure
cool?
can. You should have access.
All right, sounds good. So in case you guys didn't already guess, the platform is Air AI. And this is the link that you want to type in if you want to help me out and use my affiliate link. Okay, by the way, right? Like you get to make a free account, right? So sometimes people like try to like make an account and you go on the wait list. That's not a thing here, right? You go straight there and you get unlimited server capacity if you use this link, and you get 5 free dials. So you're going to want to type this in. Obviously, it's here. Now, with that said, right, Air AI is essentially the most famous AI dialing platform. Their CEO has been like in the high ticket space for the last, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 years, and he's only 22 years old. So super young group of founders, but they're hustlers and they grind and they make things happen. And this is the platform, right? And as I mentioned before, it's 100,000 sales and customer service reps at the tap of a button. We've been seeing the best use case is for appointment setting, like customer service. We admittedly have not serviced any clients in that space, and even Air themselves kind of pushes the appointment setting stuff, and it's been working really well. Like the cost per appointment that businesses have been getting are so much lower using this than using humans or using ads or anything like that. It's been great. And then I want to share some recordings as well. Let me just go to the page.
Yeah, you're spot on with those guys. They do hustle. I know them pretty well. They're one of our mutually beneficial partners, and they're a client of ours here at Audience Lab. They use our data in their outreach campaigns.
Exactly. Yeah. Ray, would you say that most business owners tuning in here are kind of like coaching business types?
I think there's a pretty good split of coaching and agency, but I think coaching is probably more prevalent here in this group.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So you want to hear a call where the AI calls a lead for a sales coaching program? Would that be helpful?
I'd love to hear one. I was just going to kind of set the tone, but you already did that. So now you guys know exactly what you're listening to here, and I'll shut up while you play it.
All right, let's do it.
Hey, Mark. Hey, who's this? Hey, Mark. It's Jamie from Rapid Closer.
By the way, can you hear that okay?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
I'm just giving you a quick call because we received the form you sent in online a little while ago about remote inbound closing. Is that still of interest to you?
Can you refresh my memory?
For sure, Mark. You may have seen an ad a little while ago. A guy named Mitch posted up on a balcony, ocean in the background, talking about closing deals for high-ticket coaching programs over Zoom. Does that refresh your memory a little?
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Awesome. So glad it jogged your memory, Mark. Before I let you run, I've got a few questions to run by you to see if we can help. Got a quick second?
No, I'm a little tied up right now. Can you call me back tomorrow?
I understand you're tied up right now, Mark, but I just have one quick question that will only take a moment. Can I ask you
Look at the way that the bot literally just like pummels through objections. It's freaking crazy.
that before we wrap up?
Okay, fine.
Great, I appreciate it, Mark. So can I ask what you're currently doing for work?
Yeah, I work in car sales.
Got it, you work in car sales. That's interesting. And what's got you looking into making some changes?
Mainly the commission structure isn't very good. I feel like I'm not making as much as I would like, and it's also a very physically demanding job. I'm always on my feet, so those are like the main two issues for me.
I totally understand, Mark. It sounds like the commission structure and the physical demands of your current job are the main pain points for you. That can definitely be frustrating. So what's kept you from already landing an opportunity that gets you to the income level you desire without the physical strain?
Just haven't really had the time nor the energy. Work's been really busy, so yeah, that's kind of why.
I hear you, Mark. It can be tough to find the time and energy to explore new opportunities when work keeps you busy. But hey, that's where we come in. We specialize in helping individuals like you transition into remote inbound closing gigs that offer better income potential without the physical strain. How does that sound to you?
That sounds great, but what's the catch here?
No catch, Mark. We're here to help you succeed. Basically, what we'll do is get you on the phone with our head coach, Kendall. He can dive deeper into your situation and really walk you through exactly how we can help. Then if it's a good fit, we'll get you enrolled in our program. How does that sound to you?
And then he books a call, right? So he's able to just pummel through objections, answer questions, and then just push the call along to the closer the same way that a super skilled SDR or appointment setter would do.
That was really good. That was really good. I took some notes just going over the key aspects of what happened there. It was a good opener right away, who we are. And the guy's like, can you refresh my memory? And then it did a great job. Hey, Mitch standing off the balcony overlooking the ocean, right? Like painted the picture. So he's like, oh yeah, I get it. Right. So that was done really good. Then he asked for permission to go forward. Hey, do you have a minute? No, I don't. Right. I gotta, call me back tomorrow. Like that's a brush off. That's an F off type of objection. I always like to say there's three kind of main things. I call it kind of the RBO exercise. It's just a reflex, like, hey, 10K. Oh no, I can't do it, right? It's a brush off. It's like an FU, or it's a literal real objection. Whatever that may be. And that was a brush off, and it just steamrolled it and overcame that, right? And hey, can I just ask you one question real quick? And then it got into asking him what he did, what was his main challenge, and why was he looking to make a change? And I got some good stuff there when I'm closing now. When I listen to this call, I know how to tie into A, his desire to replace that income, but B, with this guy, it's more the physical, always on my feet, and I can get you a remote from home, nice freaking chair with a massage in there, keeping your bed, whatever, right? And I can really paint that picture for him now. And then it got into what's the main challenge of not doing this yet. And I think this guy didn't say it in addition to not having enough time because he works so much, but he just doesn't know how. He doesn't know there's another way. And he kind of been stuck in that, corporate type of 9 to 5, in-person location type of job, right? Then it built the authority with who we are, and then it took it to the next step. And I love how it got that kind of what's the catch or too good to be true, right? And it kind of brushed right through that. So that was my quick little takeaways of notes I would have took if I was, say, auditing that call and it was like, a manual rep.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail right on the head of like it's I call it a shit test when a prospect is kind of like, oh yeah, no, like can you call me back later? Or like, oh yeah, like let me think about it. It's the same thing, right? It's like it's their sales resistance because they've been sold by bad sales reps for so long and so many times, like, again, like I don't want to deal with this. But if you just prove to them that you're cool, right, and that this is different, right? It's like, yeah, like absolutely no worries, like whatsoever. You mind if I just ask you a quick question? Versus like, what would a bad SDR do, Ray? In your opinion, like.
Well, one, they would go for the booking real early on in the appointment. Like, hey, I saw you clicked on our ad. I'd like to book you in with Toby or whatever, right? Whoever your closer is, doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
So that's one. I don't think that they're always great about asking for permission, which I think is a really good thing because that does help break that sales resistance, right? Hey, you got a couple minutes? You mind if I go forward? I think some of them are even kind of nervous or unclear with their opener sometimes, and they're not very consistent with that. So quite a few things like that, I think, are big differences.
Yeah. Or like, how many humans get super tripped up when someone goes, "What's the catch?" Right? It's like, what do you mean?
And once you do that, you're already screwed.
You're screwed, like, right? Because then it's like it sounds like there's a catch. So, absolutely.
Sounds like there's a catch, or you don't know what you're talking about because you're stunned. And the guy's like, "Oh, I hung you up," right? And then he thinks he won, and now he's kind of got the lead of the call there. You know what I mean? A lot of things changes with subtle little nuances. That's what's cool about sales, and that's why you and I could have done a whole nother thing about sales strategy and tactics. And like, we'll have to do that another time because you and I both kind of eat and breathe that stuff, and I still run a sales agency on the side as well. So awesome. So yeah, guys. So I will have the link down below in this live stream here. If anybody wants it, you could just also comment link if you don't see it. If you're watching on YouTube, it'll be right in the description. Go and check this out and set up your account. And the other thing I think that a lot of people, what's the word I'm looking for, have a misconception about is that this AI sounds very robotic. And I think it takes a really sophisticated audience to even start to question the authenticity of the call. I may or may not, and I would kind of wonder on that one. Like if I'm looking in there and I didn't know this was a recording and I'm just kind of closing my eyes, I'd be like, is it or is it not? And I'm not even sure. And I kind of know what I'm listening for, right? So the average person, that's what makes this work, is they think they're talking to a real person.
Yeah. And actually, like funny enough, there are some businesses that are doing really well, actually just letting the prospect know upfront that it is an AI. Like you'll be surprised how many people are happy to talk to an AI because they think it's cool, right? It's like, oh, AI. All right. Right. Like the same way that like, you would still talk to a chatbot like online because the chatbot is trying to help you. The same thing here. Or like the same way that in a type form response, you would kind of like spill your guts about your situation because you imagine that someone on the back end is going to be reading that, right? So like as long as you're clear with a prospect, like why you're asking the question, because this is going to be used as notes for then the closer, right? To walk them through exactly how we can help, then you can literally even say that it's an AI. But yeah, you could do it either way.
Yep, I fully agree. I think sometimes it's good to lay that out. And I think you got to know your industry as well. If you're in a niche in an industry where tech and AI are at the forefront, people are going to be interested because they're like, oh, can I replicate this? Can I also do this? How do I use this in my favor? If you're going with an old school contracting niche, you might want, you want that to sound more like a human engagement because those guys, talk more of the blue collar. So it really depends. It's the same as anything, knowing your industry and the niche and the lingo and the sophistication level, and you'd know how to deploy it. But I think you're right. I think sometimes just being very transparent up front, people are like, oh, this is cool, man. This thing sounds legit. You know what I mean?
100%.
Great. So before we hop off and round up, and thank you, Mitch, for all of this. We'll get together and do more of a sales oriented one sometime soon and kind of spitball back and forth because I think we can drop a lot of value to the people there as well. But really quickly, either JP or Fahad, if either of you guys would like to unmute, and if you had a question for Mitch or any takeaways, I always love to hear any feedback. I'd love to hear it if you got a second. Great call. No questions at this time. All right. Thank you, JP. And Fahad, it was awesome. Okay, so the guys aren't able to chat right now, which is totally fine. Thank you guys for the feedback and posting there in the comments. As always, you guys know you might be commenting on the Facebook Live. I try not to get distracted, and I don't even have that feed up while I'm running this. So if you have any questions in there, I'll reply to you, or I'll hook you up with Mitch. He's in the group. I'll tag him if you have any questions. And thanks again, Mitch, man. This was a blast. Thanks for coming on.
My pleasure, man. Happy to help, happy to chat, and let's do another one soon.
For sure. We'll be in touch soon, and I'll make sure to give out your link for anybody. And yeah, I highly suggest, right? That's cool that you just get a handful of these, right? Go try it with like your 5 warmest leads or newest leads or whatever, and set up an account, see how it works, test it out. And then if you need more help setting this up and you want to build it into your whole, outreach team, Mitch can help you do that as well. So thanks again. And I'll get all this information over to everybody, Mitch.
Let's do it. Thank you, Ray. Appreciate you.
Likewise. Enjoy your afternoon, buddy. We'll talk soon. Bye-bye.